Nintendo Switch 2 editions usually bring a lot of great updates to the platform. A lot of games on the Nintendo Switch 1 just ran sometimes bad or maybe at 30 FPS, and when they bring them over to the Nintendo Switch 2, sometimes they add new content in. A lot of times they double the frame rate or make the frame rate significantly more consistent. So in this video, I'm going to go over a number of games that I still think need to come to Nintendo Switch 2 with Switch 2 editions or with free updates. And this is something that I talked about last year a bit, but there's one big game and we're going to get into it right away. This has to happen with Astral Chain. But before we continue, we are giving away a Nintendo Switch 2 at 140,000 subscribers or on September 1st, whichever comes first. Subscribe, like, comment. The winner will be chosen at random and it's a worldwide giveaway. Thanks, peeps. Developed by Platinum Games and published by Nintendo on the Nintendo Switch 1 in 2019, Astral Chain is an action, adventure, RPG type of thing where you play as a futuristic police officer in a sci-fi cybernetic type of world. You have a really cool plot, in my opinion at least. Not everybody loves the story, but I think the story's interesting and it kind of ends on a, hey, there's going to be something else in the future. So with Astral Chain Nintendo Switch 2 edition, I would love to see them bring that game over and fix some of the issues with the game. And the biggest thing for me with this and why I want it to be brought over is because I want to see 60 frames per second. Listen, action games are awesome. Platinum Games is awesome, but one thing that we know about their titles is that 60 FPS for their style and their brand of action is always better than 30 FPS. And unfortunately, the Nintendo Switch 1 version of the game runs at 30 FPS, and it still plays great. It's still incredible. I still think it's a great game and I really enjoyed it. And the style of game makes it a little bit easier considering how you play the game. But if there was a 60 FPS Nintendo Switch 2 edition, I think that would greatly enhance the profile and playability of the game. And I think they can actually add some extra stuff in there. Maybe they can have a little bit of a DLC pack built in that gives us an expansion about what happens after. There's some extra missions after you beat the game, which is awesome to see, but maybe one more little thing, and I don't want to have any spoilers when it comes to story wise, but I think that would be pretty cool. So getting that 60 FPS and getting the resolution higher, especially portable mode, would be nice. This game kind of works wonders on the Nintendo Switch 1 because you wouldn't expect that system to be able to deliver what it did. A lot of third-party titles, if you're just looking from the outside looking in, a lot of third-party titles could not match what Platinum Games did with Astral Chain. So bringing that over on the Nintendo Switch 2 would be super nice. I think it would also improve the playability when it comes to responsiveness of the controls. The game does play great, but there's a few things that I'd love to see because the dodging in the game is a little weird because if you're moving the control stick in any other type of direction, it's going to just roll in one way. You're going to dodge in that way. So having some tweaks and adjustments to the dodging in the game, in addition to that 60 FPS and some new content if they can, that would be great. Now, if they brought this one over as a free update for the Nintendo Switch 2, that would also work fine too. Just update it to run at 60 FPS, update the resolution to upscale to 4K, bam, you got it right there. I'd be completely fine with that, but I would love to see a Nintendo Switch 2 edition because I want to be able to get the game on a physical cartridge with all of the updates and once again add some new content in there. Nothing too crazy, not asking them to go in and make something as expansive as, let's say, Torn of the Golden Country or Future Redeemed, but it would be nice if there was just like one more little thing because I don't know if this game's ever going to get a sequel. I mean, a sequel would be nice and I would love to have a sequel, but considering Tuda-san has moved on from Platinum Games and a lot of the team that maybe even made that title, I'm not sure where everyone is at or what's happening with that when it comes to Platinum Games, but I do think that there's probably enough people left over that know about and worked on Astral Chain to be able to deliver something with this. And hopefully Nintendo can get a Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Astral Chain out, or at least at the bare minimum a free update. Now, I originally talked about all of the Xenoblade games on my Twitter post back in April 10th, 2025, so we got all that, so awesome stuff there. I'm enjoying Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Nintendo Switch 2 edition. Shout outs to Nintendo for hooking me up with that upgrade, and the physical edition of the game is coming out in October. I am probably going to pick up the physical edition of Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, Nintendo Switch 2 edition at some point, just so I can have that fully on cart for collectors. But yeah, that also came out recently too. So we're getting all of those good stuff from Nintendo on that front. Logical Beat, Monolith Soft, all helping get those games on the Switch 2, which I do think that's important because next year it's Xenoblade Genesis time. So you want to make sure that you have all the games available on the most latest hardware, especially if you're going to be pushing a brand new Xenoblade game that essentially rewrites what they're doing. It's a fresh beginning, a new start, and a new way of doing things. So get people those Xenoblade games. Love to see that they all got brought over, running and looking significantly better. And I will have more videos on Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Nintendo Switch 2 edition coming up on the channel. So make sure you subscribe if you are not already subscribed. And of course, drop a like and put your favorite Xenoblade game in the comment section below. Okay, I also talked about Fire Emblem Three Houses and Fire Emblem Engage. We've got Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave coming up very soon here. I'm super excited. September 17th, that game is dropping. I cannot wait to play it. But it would have been nice if we got some free updates for Fire Emblem Three Houses and Engage. Both of those games are varying levels of crusty when it comes to the Switch 1. So let's just talk about Fire Emblem Three Houses first. This game was definitely rough. The Switch 1 was, I would not say struggling, but they definitely had to pare things back graphically and even frame rate wise. When you talk about some of the special attacks and moves that you do, it does drop frames a bit. And graphically speaking, the environments and the backgrounds and everything are pretty bad at times. It's got some okay character models. There's obviously some cool cutscenes and stuff, but Fire Emblem Three Houses could absolutely use a Switch 2 edition or a free update. Now, Fire Emblem Engage, it's not as bad. It's actually solid because they used a different engine. It wasn't the Warriors engine. They used Unity, and they went with a different, more simplistic art style, and I think that that helped out with the look of the game. Now, it still runs at 30 FPS, just like Fire Emblem Three Houses, so 60 FPS would be nice, but it still has some of those drop frames when zooming in from the overworld or from the overhead view in a battle map to actually fighting and doing a move. So there's a hitch every single time, or drop frames every single time, just like with Fire Emblem Three Houses. I'm not sure what's going on there and why it's on both, but it happens. So free updates for both of these games I think is probably more plausible at some point down the line, or they might just leave it. I mean, you can play boost mode via backwards compatibility on the Nintendo Switch 2, and that will lock the frame rate down to 30 FPS. You're not going to get those hitches every single time, so they might just leave that and say, hey, if you guys want to play it, just play it at 30 FPS locked, and you're going to get faster loading, you're going to get smoother frame rate with that, just having it boost mode on the Nintendo Switch 2 via backwards compatibility. So I see that more happening than them actually going through and making a Switch 2 edition or a free update, but you never know. They could just drop that at any time. Okay, let's get into Bayonetta 1 through 3. These are games that I would say need more of a free update or Switch 2 edition. I don't think there's going to be any extra content added in. They're pretty much all feature complete, and anytime that you play a Bayonetta game, it always gives you hours upon hours of content. There's always like a replay value battle arena that you can do. There's always ways that you can go back into the game and get higher scores for pure platinums. Bayonetta games have always been so good at not needing any type of DLC because everything is packed into the game right then and there. And Platinum Games actually does a good job with that. Astral Chain is the same way. Everything's just kind of packed in for the most part right then and there. But Bayonetta 1 through 3, these games have low resolution. So that's like the issue with them. I think they're 720p on the Switch 1 for the most part. And of course with the Switch 2, you have the boost mode to where you can play it at a better resolution portable. But before that boost mode, it was rough for Bayonetta 3, which was like 4 something p on the Nintendo Switch 1 portable. But having a Switch 2 edition or a free update that bumps all of these games up to 1080p 60 frames per second portable with a upscaled 4K 60 frames per second docked, that would be really nice for these games, because they already play great. Now on the Nintendo Switch 2 play even better. There was some frame rate drops on Switch 1, especially Bayonetta 3, that had a lot more frame rate drops. It was super uneven compared to Bayonetta 1 and 2 on the Nintendo Switch 1, but a up of the resolution I think would just make the game just move and look so much sleeker. And with Bayonetta games, sometimes it's kind of hard to see the enemies just based off of just how the position is, like Bayonetta 3 in particular, because you have these huge massive like wicked weaves and different demons that you can conjure up on screen, and it makes things a lot smaller. So having an improved resolution I think would help out the game a bit, just with the visibility and gameplay, especially when things get kind of crazy on screen. So Bayonetta 1 through 3, I would love to see these games come over. Now in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, that's a game that was notoriously terrible on the Nintendo Switch 1. It is fixed somewhat on the Switch 2. You can play it and it locks it down at 30, but it would be nice to have a free update just to get that up to 60 FPS. I played Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment all the way through, pretty much completed most of what you can do in a single playthrough, but there's a bunch of stuff that opens up afterwards, and that pretty much runs at a near consistent 60 FPS, so it would be nice if they brought that in line, because Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition already ran at 60 FPS on the Nintendo Switch 1, and on the Switch 2 it's even better. It upscales that to 1080p even playing portable, so that's a pretty good port of the game originally from the Nintendo Wii U. But Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, only Warriors Zelda game that does not target 60 FPS on the current hardware, so it would be nice if they brought that over and put that at 60. Alright, Metroid Dread. This game already runs and looks solid on the Nintendo Switch 1 or the Nintendo Switch 2. It runs at 900p, 60 frames per second, and doesn't really drop any frames, so I do think that a free update would be good for this one. Just get that up to 4K, 60 frames per second, and potentially even add a 120 FPS mode, considering it's a precision 2D action platformer type of game. One of the most beautiful titles on the Nintendo Switch 1. But if you're playing on a 4K TV, you can definitely see that 900p kind of holding on for its dear life. Definitely a little bit better in portable mode on a Nintendo Switch 1 OLED, or even on a Nintendo Switch 2 via backwards compatibility with boost mode, because it does get you that 900p on the 1080p display. But a 4K resolution on the bigger screen would take a game that already looks and plays wonderful and make it even better. And just like Metroid Prime 4 Beyond on the Nintendo Switch 2, that has a 120 FPS mode. It would be nice if Metroid Dread mirrored that. And I'm more of a 2D Metroid person than a Metroid Prime person, so for me personally, I would love to see all of the 2D Metroid games come over. So I want to see as much 2D Metroid on Nintendo's current platform as possible, and Metroid Dread is just one of those games that's just perfection when it comes to what it does, the story, the gameplay. It's just such a great game, and having a free update or a Switch 2 edition of the game to kind of bring it to more people's hands, that would be great, with just sleeker resolution and potentially even better frame rate. And while this isn't a Nintendo first-party game, I'm going to have a third-party upgrades list that I'd like to see come over. I want to talk about Monster Hunter Rise, because Nintendo did have this as an exclusive for quite some time, and it did get a PlayStation and Xbox port that was running at 60 FPS, and it's right there. Like, they could easily take that PlayStation and Xbox version and then put it on the Nintendo Switch 2, and it would be able to run at 60 FPS. Now, maybe they're not doing that because they want to promote the upcoming Monster Hunter Wilds, which just got rated. We know that's coming over to Switch 2, so maybe they want everybody to move over to that game, or maybe even they have a Monster Hunter Rise 2 or something else. But people have put in a ton of time on Monster Hunter Rise, and while the game is great on the Nintendo Switch 1 and even backwards compatible via the Nintendo Switch 2, having that 60 FPS would just be so nice for this type of action adventure game with some of these RPG elements that it does have. I think that faster loading and kind of getting in and out of things with the advantages of the Nintendo Switch 2 would be good, and Capcom's been pretty good with their Nintendo Switch 2 support so far. So getting a Switch 2 edition or a free update for Monster Hunter Rise to get it up to speed with the PlayStation or Xbox versions of the game. That would just be awesome and probably get me to go back into that game. I'm not huge into Monster Hunter. I don't put thousands of hours or hundreds of hours into every single game, but Monster Hunter Rise is the Monster Hunter title that I put the most time into on the Nintendo Switch 1 compared to any other Monster Hunter game, and I buy a lot of the titles. So if they can bring over Monster Hunter Rise with that 60 FPS, better resolution, because I think it's 720p on the Nintendo Switch 1, get that up to upscaled 4K, maybe 1440p, 60 frames per second, that would just be incredible. I just don't know their plans when it comes to when they're releasing Monster Hunter Wilds, what's happening if there is a built specifically for the Nintendo Switch 2 Monster Hunter game in development, or if they have any other plans to roll in a Monster Hunter Rise 2 update before the next Monster Hunter game comes out on the Nintendo Switch 2. So we'll see what happens with all of these games. But what do you think about everything that we talked about here, and what Switch 2 additions or free updates would you like to see on the Nintendo Switch 2? Let me know in the comment section below. Alright peeps, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one. Peace.